Hello, everybody. My name is Fletcher, and I work on the Chrome browser team as a Chrome browser specialist. I'm here with my associate, Nick. Nick, give yourself a quick intro.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick. I work on Google Security in the IT department.
Great. So what we're going to be covering today in this session is we've gotten a lot of feedback from our customers that managing extensions at scale can tend to be a painful process. It can be a little cumbersome, and we hear you, and obviously there's people in the seats today, so most likely you guys may feel similarly. So what we're going to be covering is we'll talk about at a high level what extensions are, why they provide value in an enterprise, as well as some inherent risks that would be included with having those present on your end users' machines. And then I'll softball it over to my pal Nick, and he'll talk a little bit more about how Google manages extensions internally and how we moved from a traditional way of managing extensions through whitelists and blacklists to a more enhanced methodology that we'll detail there. And then we'll wrap everything up and we'll talk about how you yourselves as administrators can be able to roll this out in your enterprise. So let's get started. So why extensions? What are extensions? Obviously, hopefully, people are moderately aware of what that is if you're here today. But if you're not, really, it's just a software program that's going to customize your Chrome browser experience. So users may use it to add something as simple as a theme, have a change of how Chrome browser works from a behavior perspective. So every time I open up a new tab, I get greeted with a beautiful kitten picture or something along those lines, as well as productivity tools where I need to join a web meeting or record my screen. So really, those are the values that it adds from a customization and productivity side. But Nick, I'll throw it over to you. Tell me a little bit more about what risks come with extensions, especially at scale in an enterprise.
Yeah, so while extensions have a lot of productivity benefits, there are some issues because really you're extending the browser and all of its capabilities. So extensions can introduce vulnerabilities if they're not properly coded or in case issues come up later with third-party libraries. Additionally, depending on the permissions, they can access your cookies, which is not good because that's how you authenticate to your websites. They can make requests as you, as well as inject JavaScript, which can leak data if it's not properly coded.
Great. Thanks, Nick. So some challenges that exist with managing extensions. There's kind of like three things that really make it a painful process. First is limited visibility into what extensions are installed. So how they've been installed, where they're installed, as well as what rights or permissions they require in order to run. And then being able to have a formal vetting process. I'll allow this extension, I won't allow this one. It can tend to be kind of confusing, as well as being able to have a management process around that, especially if you don't have much visibility into what extensions are present. It's hard to determine what you can or can't run, as they might be crucial to the end users in order to get their job done. So we have a dual approach to protection. The first side is securing the source, and securing the source, that's on us, right? That's on Google to be able to make sure that there is a safe and secure mechanism for your users or your administrators to be able to download and install extensions. On the other hand, securing the endpoint, that's on the administrator, right, through different policies. And we'll talk more about not only the traditional ways of managing extensions, but this enhanced methodology that you'll hear us pretty much blathering around through the whole session. So let's talk about our side, the Google side, which is securing the source. So we've had some recent developments in the Chrome Web Store on enhancing security. So we've removed inline installations. So extensions either need to be installed directly from the Chrome Web Store or pushed out via force install by an administrator. As well as we've tightened the review process. So as developers submit their extensions for approval, our algorithms have been tightened to prevent malicious extensions being even present on the web machines before they get live or present on your end users' machines. As well as we've developed and enhanced our platform through Manifest version 3 at a super, super high level. We make it easier for developers to develop extensions in a more secure way and harder for developers to create it in a less secure way. So policy managements. This is, as I said, securing the endpoint, which is up to the administrator in order to roll out these policies. Traditionally, this is all done through whitelists. These extensions are fine to be installed. Blacklists, these extensions I never want to be installed on my endpoints. The problem with traditional management, as we'll talk throughout the session, is those whitelists and blacklists tend to get pretty lengthy. And it can be a full-time job sometimes in order to maintain those. And actually, as Nick will highlight later on in the session, it's something that Google traditionally, internally, used to manage through those traditional whitelists and blacklists. But we actually moved to an enhanced management style, which we'll highlight and provide you guys some tips and tricks on how you guys can do it yourselves. But also, it's really managing by the behavior of the extension itself. So the permissions or what rights those extensions need in order to run, managing just by that instead of by the extension itself, as well as blocking the action of the extension on your most sensitive websites. So users are able to get the extensions that they want, but you're able to protect your most sensitive sites from extensions reading information for them. So we talked about kind of how, I kind of foreshadowed, I guess, how Google moved from a traditional whitelist and blacklist method to an enhanced methodology. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Nick, and he's going to talk about that journey for Google. So go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Fletcher. So just a little FYI, like a lot of other companies, we have a lot of machines. And when I say a lot of machines, it's in the hundreds of thousands. So trying to make this work is something that we need to make sure it scales. And rather than whitelisting one or two extensions, we have about 60,000 extensions that our employees actively use. So going through and individually looking at each one of these isn't really something we can do. Additionally, our employees really like developing new extensions for their productivity. We have around 7,000 extensions, and that's not just that people have made it at some point, but these are actively used and installed on people's machines. So internally, we wanted to make sure there was something that worked for us. So the whitelist and blacklist just wasn't working. So our philosophy, we could have just said, let's just block everything, or let's just allow everything. But we wanted to make sure we allowed users to access the extensions they need, but we also don't want that additional risk around it. So we wanted to have something that still let people be productive and didn't have a risk to our users, because we have the responsibility of protecting the data that our users entrust with us. So as Fletcher mentioned earlier, when we were using the traditional blacklist and whitelist, it was kind of missing the mark. There was limitations. Our blacklists were getting into the tens of thousands of extensions long, and that's just not something that's doable. That also means that reviewing these tens of thousands of extensions on the whitelist isn't really something we can do in depth. And it really doesn't help the situation when an extension can go and pull code from a different website the moment it loads, because there's really no way to review that. Additionally, reviewing these means you need someone to be able to go through the JavaScript, figure out what it's doing, and when it's minified and things like that, that makes it really hard to do. So it wasn't really giving us the security we needed. So we needed to come up with something different. We needed something that would balance the productivity of the users so they got to use the extensions they wanted, so they weren't waiting on us to review an extension and whitelist it, along with the needs of security, because we need to protect our employees as well as the data that our users entrust with us. So we have a new approach that Fletcher talked about earlier, this enhanced management capability. So we needed something that scaled to fit those tens of thousands of extensions, that increased user productivity so they're not waiting on us to whitelist extensions, as well as mitigating the risk that came along with it. And we did this through the introduction of managed by permission and the runtime host controls, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So before we talk about managing by permission, we need to understand what permissions really are. So to limit the risk to users, extensions must declare which sites they're going to interact with, as well as the risky actions they may take. And they do this by requiring developers, when they're making the extension, to declare permissions. And depending on what the extension does, some sites have site permissions, some have device permissions, some have both. And it's the combination of these two that cover most of the risky actions that an extension can take. So the site permissions are the list of sites that an extension may interact with, and the device permissions cover the risky actions specific to the device. And the convergence of these two cover most of the risk. So when we talk about manage by permission, what this is actually allowing you to do is block the installation of an extension specifically by the permissions it declares. So if you don't want an extension to be able to view the screen, you could say the desktop capture permission is blocked. And then you wouldn't have to look at the code of each extension. Chrome would know at installation time that extension has a desktop capture permission. Additionally, you can configure extensions. So if there is an extension that you want to allow, even though it has a particular permission, you can do that. This also allows you to what we call permission pinning. So if you have an extension you like, you can list the permissions it can use. And if in the future it updates and adds a new permission, it's instantly disabled on all of your users until you modify the policy. So you don't have to worry about extensions updating new permissions without you knowing. And additionally, you can list a custom installation error message. So when users are blocked, you can tell them where to go to get help. So this new method is allowing you to be safer from compromised extensions, because rather than worrying about what happens if something updates or making sure that you've reviewed the extension properly, you're looking at its behavior. And you don't have these long whitelists and blacklists anymore. You don't have to worry about updates. And you don't have to vet each extension individually. So let's take a look at how this looks in action.
Great. All right. So thanks, Nick. Yeah, so we talked about block by permission. We talked about how it works and the value that it offers. But let's see it in action, okay? So in this scenario, I have a user, and that user has customized their browser experience. They've installed this extension that every time they open a new tab, they get presented with a super awesome anime-style Studio Ghibli screenshot. It's dynamic, it looks great. Myself as administrator really don't care if they have this installed on their machine. If they want to animate it up, I'm totally cool with it. However, and unlucky for this user, this particular extension uses a permission or has a specific right that I've determined is no bueno, right? So under this, this is a screenshot of the manifest for this extension. And I've highlighted in my research that there's a certain permission that I say, no way is this going to run on any of my devices. And that permission is the storage permission. Quick side note, there's not really much wrong with the storage permission. It's not nefarious or anything like that. Just for demonstration purposes, I picked it. So unfortunately for my user, they're going to lose their super awesome Studio Ghibli anime theme. But lucky for me, we're going to be able to secure the endpoint, right? Which is really kind of the goal. So there's actually 3 ways that you can be able to do this via policy. So the first way is group policy. And this is the way that most enterprises are managing Chrome browser. So if you're not managing via group policy and you have it in your environment, I highly recommend that you take a look and download the Chrome Enterprise Bundle. It includes some handy-dandy MSIs that you can use to deploy out to your end users through your application deployment method of choice, as well as 300 plus policies that you can be able to use to maintain the look and feel, manage bookmarks, security settings, all that stuff. So if you have the super eagle eyes, you can see that I am in the extension management settings policy. But I'll zoom in for you. So here I've declared I put a JSON string in there. And if you take a look at the left, or I think stage left, right left, I don't know. There's a star. And in the star, that denotes that this is a default policy. And what that means is that this policy will apply to all extensions. So extensions that are already installed will be disabled, and any extensions that are going to be installed will be blocked. Just note that if the extension is already present, it'll just disable it, it will not uninstall it. And then I've declared that the actual blocked permission, and then storage is the permission that I'm blocking. So I talked about there's 3 ways. First way, group policy. Second, Windows registry. So if you don't necessarily like to write JSON, which maybe there's some JSON gurus in the audience, I'm not sure. I'm sure you can get your kicks on the group policy part. But here is the location where you can be able to create a subkey under HKey local machine, software, policy, Google, Chrome. Yeah, I got them all. Okay, and then extension settings, and then there's a subkey under there. See that star again? So this is a default policy. And before you start pulling out your phones and taking photos, or no, you're totally fine. Yeah, I was going to say that we actually have a white paper that's coming out. It's called Managing Extensions in Your Enterprise that has step-by-step instructions. But you can feel free to take your photo whenever you want. It's not NDA or anything. Otherwise, there would have been like a million slides that say, "Do not take photos." Anyway, we have a white paper that's coming out, which has step-by-step processes, not only to do this enhance method, but also the traditional way. So maybe the enhance method isn't right for you. People like options. So if you want traditional whitelists and blacklists, it has step-by-step instructions in order to do that. And that's actually was published yesterday. So at the end, we'll have some resource links. And in a couple of days or so, it'll get pushed to your next app. You can go ahead and click on that. So I've created this key. It actually converts it to JSON on the back end, which is nice. And I talked about 3 ways: group policy, Windows registry, and the last one is the Google Admin Console, or the new Chrome browser cloud management feature that was just released. Phil, was it today? It was today. So hooray for you guys, and for us. So Chrome browser cloud management, if you guys haven't heard of it, it's an exciting new feature that's it's a free feature, and it's a great way to not only be able to push policies from the cloud, but also gives you really enhanced view into the extensions that are installed and present on your users' machines. As I talked way long ago in the beginning of the presentation, that's the pain, right? Being able to find out what extensions are installed, how they were installed, and what permissions or rights they require in order to run. So you can actually get all that information from Chrome Browser Cloud Management, so I highly recommend you take a look at it. And if you wanted to do this block by permission, you check a box, right? So like I said, not throwing anything up on the JSON people that like to write JSON, but checking a box to me seems a little bit easier. At least it was easy to get the screenshot. So I've rolled this out through one of my 3 policies: group policy, Windows registry, and the Google Admin Console, or the new Chrome Browser Cloud Management. And let's see what happens. So sad face for my user. I've updated the policy, and they get a message, and it says, "This has been blocked." As Nick highlighted before, you can customize this message to say, "Contact IT," "File a ticket through your ITSM tool," whatever you guys like. So you can see once it blocks, I open up new tabs, and unfortunately for them, the anime wallpaper is gone. So pour one out for this user. So, all right.
And it also blocks the installation of new extensions, not just the currently installed extensions as well.
Exactly. So Nick, tell us a little bit more about runtime host controls.
Sure. So block by permission is helpful, but it's a rather heavy-handed way of going about things sometimes, because that means the user can't actually use the extension. So another option is runtime host controls. And what this feature does is it lets you define a list of websites that you consider sensitive, and it lets the extension work on all of the sites except for the ones you define as sensitive. So when they start to do anything like reading cookies or injecting JavaScript or modifying web requests about a particular site, the browser will say, "What site are you attempting to do this on?" And if it's one of the listed sensitive sites, then it'll be blocked. So the users still get to install their extensions, and it'll work on all the other websites, just not your websites which have your sensitive customer data on them. So the benefits is the users can use the more extensions, and you also get to protect your most sensitive data. You still don't have to do any whitelists or blacklists. You don't have to review any updates. And you don't have to look at the code of each extension. You're simply defining the list of sites you want to protect.
Great.
And the combination of these two is really what we rely on instead of the whitelists and blacklists.
So that's what Google IT uses internally.
Exactly.
Great. So, all right, so let's see it in action. So I have a user. They have an extension installed. This extension toggles a super cool and edgy dark mode. They can toggle it on, they can toggle it off. And, you know, as I felt the same way about my anime wallpaper user, I feel the exact same way about my dark mode user. I do not care if you have this extension installed. I have other things to worry about. So yes, if they want to ruin their eyes in their parents' basement, totally fine with me, right? So, however, I've denoted that Google Arts and Culture is my sensitive site, and I don't want any extension to read any data off of my sensitive site because it could have my IP, it could have PII or personal identifying information for my users or my customers. So no extensions can run on that site. So let's talk about how you can do it. So we talked about 3 ways. As you guessed, the first one is group policy, right? I'm back in my friendly nest, which is the extension management settings policy, and I have some JSON. I'm using the star for the default policy, so this is going to say no extensions can run on my super secret public site, artsandculture.google.com. As you can see, there's some stars also in the URL. So there's some syntax that you could put in here to make sure that you can, this will cover like HTTP, HTTPS, as well as you can put some stars in there so that way you cover your like sub pages so you're not just covering your landing page, right? So first way, group policy. Second way, Windows registry. So you can see I'm kind of a broken record here. So it's the same sub key, and I've just added a string there for runtime block hosts, and that value is the same way. So group policy, Windows registry, big surprise. Last one is the admin console or Chrome browser cloud management. So I'm actually in the same setting where I did the block by permission. I just, right under there where I checked storage before, I have a blocked URL section. So I just put that syntax in there. And if I want to block multiple sites, I just hit enter, put one under the other, and then I can be able to block my most sensitive sites. So group policy, Windows registry, Google admin console, Chrome browser cloud management, your flavor of choice, and let's see the after effects. So the user goes, the policy is applied, he goes to he or she or they, click on the toggle and it does not affect my hypersensitive site of Google Arts and Culture. However, it uses, it's able to work just fine on CNN.travel. So this is really what we're trying to get to, what every IT administrator's trying to get to, is that kind of nirvana state that people don't think exists, but it's the balance between users actually getting what they want and being secure on the endpoint. So users, they can still install these extensions. They can still run them and get the customized experience or those productivity tools. But also we have a dual layer of security to make sure that users, we're protecting our most sensitive sites and our endpoints at the same time. So Nick?
Yeah, so when we went about rolling this out, the first step was really discovering what extensions are out there. And we needed to be able to determine what permissions they use. So we didn't simply push out a change and affect everyone and remove all their extensions. We needed to know what the impact was. So this is something that external customers can also use CBCM for, the Chrome browser cloud management, to be able to determine what extensions you have as well as what permissions are on those. And from there you can figure out which permissions you're going to want to block as well as which extensions need an exception. So the next step was the planning. That was the grandfathering in the existing extensions. So our users didn't notice. So we grandfathered in all of our existing extensions to just stop the bleeding. And then we kind of go from there and whittle that whitelist down. So we audited that whitelist and removed the unnecessary entries as time went on. After we did that permission-based blocking, then we went back and we did the runtime host policies. And we added those in one by one, just slowly making sure that we didn't affect users' And from then on, we just created for ongoing maintenance, we created essentially a flow chart that we handed to our help desk that they can simply follow whether or not to add an extension to the whitelist based on what it's doing, what existing things are whitelisted. And from that, we actually have a fairly low queue. It's about like I think about a fourth of an FTE currently that is required to run that, or less for a company our size. So it's definitely something that can scale pretty well.
Great. So obviously before, what was the before state? I mean, obviously the blacklist and whitelist was like...
Yeah, many tens of thousands of extensions on a blacklist, and even then it wasn't really giving us the security benefits we needed.
Okay. And I would assume that you're this laissez-faire person, like kind of leaning back and just kicking it?
Oh, it's certainly a lot better now.
You seem relaxed today, so that's good.
Yeah. Okay. This has helped.
Look at us with banter. This is great. Okay, so so how do you guys apply this in your enterprise, right? Pretty similar, right? And gosh, I'm just going to plug it again. Chrome Browser Cloud Management, right? Being able to get visibility into the extensions that are installed, it's really the first step, right? You need to find out where they're installed, who installed them, what permissions they require, and you can really get all this visibility in Chrome Browser Cloud Management. So, and it is the first step in order to get to enhanced extension management is auditing the extensions, right? Because if you don't know what's out there and what different departments or geolocations are using, there could be some issues when you just start rolling out policies that may block extensions that are crucial to or core applications, right? So whether you use Chrome Browser Cloud Management, which obviously I'm biased to recommend, but I recommend, you could also survey your end users. So, call, email, however you do it, pester them until they, find those kind of gold users that represent each individual department or geolocation and find out what extensions they have installed. And then take that information and determine and build a master list. So this would be, these are the hosts that I know must be secure, that I need to protect. So those would be the runtime hosts ones that you would block, or, yeah, exactly. I'm agreeing with myself, sorry. And then these are the permissions to restrict. These are the permissions I never want to run on any of my endpoints. And then review any existing process. And as Nick kind of highlighted, you might find that your whitelists and blacklists might be able to be shortened, and you might be able to let some extensions run and be installed that you normally wouldn't have been able to let go in the wild. And then the rest of these steps are really just kind of traditional change management, IT project management. You're going to want to talk to the people, the department heads, because you're going to be affecting their users, and you're going to want to test it in a lab and a pilot. I know nobody in this room tests this in production, right? All right, that wasn't really reassuring there. Okay, establish an operational process. New extensions are going to be rolling in every day, so you're going to need to find a way to vet in and vet out, usually by looking at the manifest and seeing what permissions are present. Or you can just, since you have your baseline of what permissions you will or won't allow, you can just have the user install them, and if it gets blocked, then they can submit a ticket, and then you can take a look at it at that point. And then review results, survey your end users, roll out production in phases to limit possible collateral damage. And here's how you can get started right away. So sign up for Chrome Browser Cloud Management, take that first step to be able to see what extensions are present on your end user's machine so you can start building that master list. It's really crucial first step to make sure that you're going to be effective with this management style. Test out the extension management style that we're talking about today, so block by permission, block by runtime host. And also take a look at some of the latest documentation. Like I said, we have a white paper that's live now. It's actually linked, it's the second bullet point, which is the extension management white paper. So I think that this will be pushed to your guys' next app via PDF in a day or so. Otherwise, I tried it today just to see how well the keywords was doing, and just type in extension management in enterprise and it should come up. Otherwise, I need to argue with my documentation person. So the Help Center, feel free to submit, take a look there, as well as at the very bottom, the browser specialist. So that's the team that I work on. So if you guys want to get some more information about how you can manage Chrome browser in your environment, you want to talk about making Chrome a default browser, I recommend it. And feel free to email at us at chrome-enterprise-browser-specialist@google.com. It just rolls off the tongue. It's really easy to remember. But like I said, it'll be pushed to your next app.